Can you believe it's been just about 3 years since the Spanish religious horror sci fi series 30 Coins, or 30 Monedas, debuted on HBO? Well, season 2 is finally here. Over the last 2 days, I've binged all 8 episodes. This is a wild season, so grab your coins and we'll get started. After sabotaging the anti-pope's plan to use the 30 coins for world domination, Elena, Paco, and Father Vergara are on a new mission to prevent total annihilation while a new threat works in the background. So, as a quick recap of how Season 1 left us, Father Vergara forced Santoro to take a header off the balcony, thwarting Santoro's ascension as the anti-pope, and also then scattering the coins so that all of those present went into just a rage-fueled melee trying to take control of as many coins as they could, resulting in most people dying some gruesome deaths. Now, Paco and Elena escaped the town, with Elena in terrible shape, while Father Vergara bled out on the pavement with Santoro. After seeing this unfortunate turn of events, Angelo walks off, seemingly defeated. So this season picks up with Elena being in a coma, Paco being at her side almost non-stop, despite her medical team just encouraging him to go get some rest. Vergara, along with Santoro, find themselves in hell. And, like it's shown in the trailer, they won't be stuck there for the entirety of the season. There's also a social media vlogger who goes to Pedraza to find out what happened to the town and the residents, then ends up stumbling into some familiar faces from Season 1 that she might be able to help. Now, each of the 8 episodes are just about an hour long, and just like within the latter half of Season 1, these are more intense and extreme in terms of action, freakiness, and peril. Now, the story is split into 4 separate arcs, bouncing between each as the narrative plays out. Now, one arc follows Elena and Paco as she battles visions while in her coma, trying to understand the confusing imagery and the messages that she's being shown. This also leads to some moments of just extreme nastiness. There was an episode, it had me shaking my head quite a bit and then pulling my feet up off the floor because what we're shown, it's just not right. Now, another arc follows Vergara and Santoro in hell. And the visual representation of this, I thought it was dreadful and horrifying. There are a lot of interpretations of what hell is or could be, as well as how it could look. Now here, with creator Alex de la Iglesia's vision, he showcases a sweeping city with lava flowing through it, this charred and smoky sky, within the inhabitants enduring near constant torture. And I say near because there is a reprieve that we see with some of the actions they undergo. That doesn't mean that the torment and the pain stop. It's a gnarly visual and it creates a visceral environment. Now, the demons that are shown, they also have this Cenobite-like quality to them. Now, sometimes from their look and other times just from their unflinching desire to create pain and suffering. And while a lot of the imagery is dark and obscured sometimes, we still get a great sense of what's happening and the horrors. Now, not all of the graphics were stellar, but that could also be because I had screeners that may not have been 100% complete yet with all of the special effects. Now, a third arc involves Haruka, a social media influencer, as she teams up with Lagunitas. Now, this timeline, it gets a bit convoluted because it involves a lot of cat and mouse games, sending characters on excursions that take them to secret locations, psychiatric hospitals, and then to various other locations. Now, finally, Merce returns, and this time she meets a dude named Christian Barbaro, played by Paul Giamatti. Now, he's great in the role, with his just wild eyes and these frenzied looks, and he's sort of a maniacal presence in this season. It's kind of like how Santoro was in Season 1, and there is a lot to Barbaro. He just creates incredible and dramatic instances that help to keep the tension of the show high, but also help to send it off the rails in terms of craziness. This season is a bit jumbled, mostly because of the different arcs that we follow. There's also a lot of globe hopping that occurs, and with several different groups to keep track of and their constantly shifting locations, it was easy to get a bit turned around. Now, I don't think the confusion of the locations hurts the story that much, but because everything is so disjointed between the separate storylines and then the final goal, the season as a whole, it felt less cohesive and then less straightforward. Another drawback with the separated storylines is that I never totally felt like I was spending enough time with any particular character. The pacing is quick with a huge amount of urgency created by the antagonists, but also with that, my connection with all of the players, it felt a little bit rushed and then thin. Now, I loved how this season took what worked from Season 1 in terms of monsters and creepy visuals, and then it tripled down on them to go into some just nightmare territory. Now, I mentioned all of the hell visuals, but there are some sequences where characters have powers that then they exploit for their benefit. Now, some are shown in the trailer, like Merce being able to throw things around with her mind. But then we get to witness a sort of puppeteering. It's unsettling, but it's also wonderfully executed. And I'd mentioned how all of the special effects may not be fully complete. I really do hope that's the case because one in the middle episodes, his character meets a brutally gruesome end. But it all looked incredibly fake, and so all that horror was lost. There are also visuals in the final episode that don't look very polished. Some even venture a bit towards Monty Python. And while they weren't flawless, I do applaud the creativity and the uniqueness of the scenarios. De la Iglesia, he just took a massive swing for the story. And I'm sure it will be a bit polarizing once everybody's had a chance to see all of it. Now, I appreciate how this season continued to include shocking moments. One actually made me gasp out loud because of the suddenness and unexpected nature of what went down. It's not an outcome I wanted, but it did illustrate to me how connected I was to certain portions of the narrative, even if I didn't realize it at first. Now, I like how controversial this season could be. I know that season 1 probably pushed some boundaries, but with this one, some thought-provoking ideas were raised, and some stuck with me, while others were just intriguing in the moment. Now, for example, and this may not be a new thought for you, but it was definitely unique for me. In the biblical account of Judas's betrayal, the question here is raised on how Judas was really the hero of the story, bringing about the events that then led to Christ's crucifixion and then salvation. Now, I'd never thought of it from that perspective. And while this isn't a show that is trying to educate, I did find the theological questions kind of engaging. Now, something that stood out to me in a bothersome way this season, it was minor, but it was still nagging me. Paco went from being a mild-mannered, small-town mayor in the first season to now being Jason Bourne, who has all sorts of action-y skills. And it was strange to see him utilize some of these skills in moments that didn't feel like they were part of his horror character. Other times, though, he captured exactly how I expected him to be, stumbling and just doing his best to survive crazy situations without any formal training or survival skills. So the season overall is fun and engaging, filled with frightful sights and sadistic actions, expanding the story and conspiracy in massive ways with horrendous consequences at risk. The story is a bit jumbled thanks to several storylines, preventing cohesiveness within the arcs. And the religious themes could be challenging for some, introducing ideas that are controversial and provocative. Characters continue to be both engaging and infuriating, creating complications that work to add dread and suspense while also increasing peril. The end of the season may be a bit too out there for everyone, but it's commendable for the show to take a risk and present something drastically different and unique, mashing religious, supernatural, horrific, and sci-fi ideas into a narrative that is twisty and frightful, with just a bit of absurdity. I'm not sure I'm totally on board with the resolution, but the season does leave the story open to continue, providing more of an intriguing cliffhanger than a solid conclusion. There's a little sex, some nudity, a lot of profanity, and then a ton of gory violence. I give season 2 of 30 coins, or 30 monedas, 3.5 out of 5 couches. So are you a fan of the series? Do you have a favorite character? While I like Vergara, I think my favorite really is Antonio, because of how intense he can get. Let me know yours, though, in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.